I guess this is the topic today. I did not plan on doing this topic, but it was just asked in the chat, what is polyamory? And it's been a long time since I've done an updated video on this particular subject. So I guess I'll go ahead and do that now? Might as well. Also, we're in the middle of a hype train, so if you guys don't want to hear a whole bunch of people gifting subs, else maybe not the video for you. But thank you very much for the follow. Thank you very much for the follow. I'm trying to find it. There we go. Yaro Giovanni. I was trying to find it, and I kept not being able to find it. Anyway, fan art, and then we'll move into the actual topic here. From even Ivana Dragmeyer said, here's a little Nya Suris. And you know what? It is a Nya Suris. Those eyes, though. Jesus, those eyes. Those are really good eyes. I'm sorry, I just really appreciate good eyes. Next, we have one from Pixel Girl, said, made a Meowth Suris while in the hospital. If read, can you read it in Meowth's voice? Oh, God. Fine. Oh, whoa. Otta, you fucking twerp. I can't do that voice. I'm so sorry. Also, Nakibri, thank you very much for gifting 10 Tier 1 subs. I was not even paying attention, and somehow we hit level 4 during the hype train. I was not expecting that. Apparently, we are there now. I'm gonna have to lower the volume on alerts. I'm gonna have to do that. We're just gonna do that. I have to lower that volume. I'm so sorry. Oh my god. Anyway, okay. As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions, and I guess let's go ahead and get right into the actual topic. What is polyamory? In a word, it is dating multiple people. Like, that's functionally, that is the easiest way to go about it. But realistically, what does it mean? So polyamory just describes the practice of engaging in multiple romantic relationships simultaneously. This is different from something like, say, swinging. If you're swinging, you are likely engaging in other sexual relationships, and usually swingers are people who are couples who are engaging with other couples or engaging with other single people. It depends. If you've ever been to a swingers party, there's not always all couples there. There are sometimes people who are just there single, and they're there to do with other people. Polyamorous people don't necessarily engage in sex. There are asexual or sex-repulsed people who still find themselves with the ability to engage in multiple relationships at the same time. So they might date other people over and above their first partner, but they won't be having sex with those other people. Some other poly relationships do allow for sex between multiple partners. It depends on your particular style, it depends on your sexuality, and it depends, most importantly, on what your partners are comfortable with. There are some situations where nobody involved is comfortable with individuals having sexual time without everybody who's involved in the relationship present in some way, shape, or form. There are some that only, exclusively want individual one-on-one time and do not want group activities. It really depends on who you are and who you're with. But there's a couple of terms to maybe go over if we're talking about polyamory and what it is, that we might as well just get into, because these are things you're going to hear if you are talking to people who are polyamorous. But right before we get into all of those terms, also, Rosalind Bud, thank you very much for the cheer. We're going to turn the alert box back on. Hopefully it's not going to destroy everything. What is polyamory not? Polyamory is not cheating. Cheating, by definition, happens when there are more than one person who are engaging in a violation of the rules of a relationship. So, for instance, for some relationships, Maki Himiko might drop a bunch of gifted subs and cause Lulu laughter again. For some relationships, you might actually have a rule that you're not allowed to watch porn for whatever reason. There might be trauma attached to it, what have you. In those relationships, then watching porn would potentially be a form of cheating. Also, Maki Himiko, thank you very much for gifting even more Tier 1 subs and causing the Lulu laughter continue even further on into the abyss. You might have relationships where it is perfectly fine for you to watch porn, but if you are watching live porn, like a cam girl or something, then that is considered cheating because there's another person on the other end who may or may not know you're there, and that may be your boundary. The boundary where cheating is in a relationship is always going to be different depending on who's in the relationship. In polyamorous relationships, depending on the relationship, the rules might be that you're allowed to date other people so long as the people who you're already with have vetted them, have had a conversation with them, have had a chance to engage with them first before you go off and do your own thing with them. For some people, they might have a more open stance where you're able to just do what you want so long as you get tested regularly to make sure that you are not a danger to everybody else who you are dating. It really and truly depends on the people who you are in the relationship with. Also, Clogan, thank you very much for raiding with a party of 49. Just, we are getting all of the random stuff in the middle of trying to explain this one thing. Thank you so much for the raid. What were you guys doing? And in the meantime, I'm going to continue doing my thing. So, we've gone into polyamory is not cheating. Cheating can happen within polyamory, though. I'll give you an example. If you are a polyamorous person and the rule is you are allowed to date other people as long as your partner has okayed you dating them, as long as there haven't been any red flags, and then you meet with somebody without your partner knowing and you two have a fling, or hell, you two even start engaging in flirtatious activity, that could be considered cheating in your particular relationship if your partner has not okayed this other person being part of your relationship. It just like in a monogamous relationship, how your partner openly flirting with someone else or your partner engaging in sexual activity with someone else can be seen as a breach of trust, can be seen as cheating. In a polyamorous relationship, those things can be cheating too. If you don't have an open relationship and you have a poly relationship that has sets, rules, and standards, which most of them do, yeah, these things can be considered cheating. If you are engaging with a partner and you're allowed to engage with that partner, but that partner brings in another person, say they want to have a threesome that day, and your other partner has not okayed that extra person being part of a sexual relationship with you, that can be cheating. This is something that I've experienced in the past, and it was not a pleasant experience for me. So, that can be considered cheating. Just like if you were to engage with that person solo, bringing them in a group setting does not suddenly mean you're not engaging with another person that your partner hasn't okayed. Speaking of engagement, let's get into those terminologies. So, one term that you're probably going to hear a lot, probably the first term you're going to hear in talking about polyamory in any way, shape, or form, is a triad. What is a triad? Well, a triad is a poly relationship between three people. Usually, this means all three people are dating each other. So person A is dating person B and C. Person B is dating person A and B, so on and so forth. These can also be seen as closed V relationships or just triangles, but the jargon doesn't necessarily matter. All it means is there's three people who are all actively dating each other. For many people, this is the first kind of relationship that people try when they are polyamorous. Usually it's a group of people. It's a couple who decide that they want to find a third person so that they can have threesomes with, or they can, go on dates with. And this is a common thing to see, and it's probably, again, the first term you're going to hear when talking about polyamory. But this leads into the second term you're going to hear, and it relates directly to triads, a unicorn. And jumping off of that, unicorn hunters. Now, what is a unicorn? What is a unicorn hunter? A unicorn is typically referred to as a female, usually an AFAB person, who is bisexual or pansexual, and therefore a couple, usually a heterosexual male and a bisexual or pansexual AFAB female, usually this coupling will be looking for a third person to, quote, complete their relationship. Now, it's so rare to find a single individual. It's so rare to find a single individual who is going to want to date you and your partner, because you and your partner are two different people. You are not a unit. You are two individuals with individual different needs, and the likelihood of finding a singular person who can fit both of you perfectly like a glove, it is so rare that we generally call that potential person a unicorn. But the people who are looking for that particular relationship are called unicorn hunters. They're looking for that, bisexual, pansexual person to, quote, complete their relationship. This causes a few problems. One, your relationship was already complete with just you and the other person. If you're in a polyamorous relationship, you should not be seeking other people to be the building blocks into your relationship. Your relationship that you're already in needs to be stable. People need to be... If you bring other people into a relationship, they need to be additive. They do not need to be complementary. Don't bring someone in to fix a problem in your relationship. You and your partner need to fix the problems that are in your relationship on your own. And then if other people get added into your relationship, then cool. But they need to be dating people who are stable and are comfortable with themselves, not people who are looking for them to fix all of their problems. That's not fair to them, and it's ultimately not going to be fair to anybody in the relationship. Unicorn hunters are generally seen as predatory, because usually the person that they're looking for is going to be seen as more of an object. They're looking for that person either primarily for sex or because there's some emotional, hole that needs to be filled. This person is probably being sought to fix some kind of problem, and thus will be boiled down to what they can do for the relationship and not the person that they are. This is why unicorn hunters are generally looked at with scorn within polyamorous communities. And unfortunately, most people who are trying poly for the first time end up being unicorn hunters, whether they realize it or not. Just a few words of advice: if you and your partner are both dating the same person, that's not going to solve jealousy issues. In fact, in many cases, that can magnify jealousy issues. So, just don't. Just don't. But let's go ahead and move into a couple other terms here. One other big term you're going to hear a lot in polyamory is compersion. This can be considered the opposite of jealousy. Compersion describes the feeling of experiencing joy when another person is experiencing joy. In the poly community, usually this means that you feel happy that your partner is happy with another partner. And there's a term for what that other partner is as well. We'll get to that in just a second, but let's focus on compersion. So let's say that you, as an individual, you have a girlfriend, and that girlfriend gets a boyfriend, and they're about to go on their first date, and you're super excited for them going on their first date. You're happy that they are being overjoyed. There's a term that needs to be brought into this as well, called NRE, New Relationship Energy. We'll get into that one here in a sec too. But that feeling of joy in the joy that your partner's feeling, the term we have for that is called compersion. One of the key factors to whether or not you should consider a polyamorous relationship is whether or not you can even feel compersion. Everybody's going to feel jealousy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Nobody is this magically non-jealous person who can avoid feelings when it comes to a relationship. Also, Irish Swede, thank you very much for redeeming your points for an oh well. This magical person that just doesn't feel jealousy, they don't exist. Everybody feels jealousy on some level. But not everybody feels compersion on some level. If you cannot feel compersion, if you cannot feel joy in your other relationships happening, then you probably don't need to be in a polyamorous relationship, because if the only feeling you can feel is that jealousy, that's going to fester. That's not fair to you. That's not fair to other people who will have to deal with you. That's not healthy. Do not be in a relationship that is causing you to constantly feel negative, unhealthy emotions. If you can't feel compersion, have a discussion with your partner if you are trying to seek out a polyamorous relationship. You may need to figure something else out. But there are two terms that get brought in here. One of them is, what is your partner's partner called? So your girlfriend has a boyfriend. You're not dating that boyfriend. What are they to you? They are your metamor. Or your meta, for short. This is a person who is outside of you, so meta, but they are also someone who ideally loves your partner, so amor. That's how the word gets sandwiched together. It's just like every other term in polyamory. It's a very sloppy term that has been brought up ad hoc, but they are nonetheless the terms that we use. Your partner's partner is your metamor. When your partner goes on a date with their partner who you're not dating, they are dating your metamor. When you are experiencing jealousy towards who your partner's dating, you are experiencing jealousy towards your metamor. But another word that I brought up earlier, that feeling that you or your partner will get on that first date, that's called new relationship energy, or NRE. Now, this is a really, and I mean this, incredibly dangerous thing. New relationship energy is that feeling of butterflies in the stomach, that feeling of that honeymoon feeling. There's a couple problems here. That honeymoon feeling you get with a new partner, that wonderful, oh my god, everything's so new and so fresh, that's a great feeling. Ride that wave as long as you've got it, but a couple things to consider. Let's say that your partner spots some red flags with this person, and these aren't normal jealousy red flags. This is just they're noticing some potentially abusive aspects of this partner you go into. New relationship energy, much like in a monogamous relationship, that honeymoon feeling can blind you to negative aspects of a potential partner. When you are blinded to those aspects, you might end up ignoring certain things that they are doing. I'll give you an example. Years ago, well before I started dating Raz, I was dating somebody who would do the whole, like, whisper sweet nothings in your ear thing, but the things that they would say is, what if we ran away together? What if we did stuff like this? And in my brain, I was like, oh, you want to be with me? That's so romantic. What I wasn't processing was, this was a person trying to pull me away from my current relationship. And that was not something that I thought about then because I was blinded by new relationship energy. And as a result, I did not communicate effectively with my partner at that time that was even going on at all, because it didn't occur to me that it was a red flag. And it didn't occur to me that it was a red flag because I was experiencing NRE. That honeymoon feeling was blinding practically everything. Nagibre asked a question, what's the difference between empathy, compersion, and empathy with positive feelings? So, compersion, think of empathy with positive feelings as you sat in somebody else's shoes and you felt good feelings sitting in their shoes. Compersion doesn't require you to sit in their shoes. You just feel happy that they're happy. You feel happy that they're happy doing something with someone else. Yeah, and 10 Dead Bunnies has it right. NRE good, ride the wave, but please be aware of the sharks in the water. It can get very, very dangerous to get blinded by NRE, and you can end up sacrificing your relationship that you had prior to polyamory for the sake of a new one that might not even last because you are blinded to the potential problems in that relationship. Bear of the Bay, thank you very much for redeeming your points for an ara. You fucking monster. But what do you call a polyamorous relationship? We got all these terms for, like, the individual things happening in the relationship. What do you call a polyamorous relationship? Most people call it a polycule. A polycule is a group consisting of polyamorous partners and their other partners. Think of it as your extended polyamorous family. It's almost like a little mini community where you establish your own rules of engagement, and it necessitates communication. We're going to get into communication after we're done with terminology, but just remember that we're going to get into that. Okay? Now, speaking of those individual partners, there are two types of polyamorous relationships. There are hierarchical and non-hierarchical relationships. A hierarchical relationship refers to any form of relationship where there are members of the relationship that are considered more important than others. Now, let's rewind to the unicorn hunter. The unicorn hunter, generally, they value the relationship of their couple infinitely more than the third person they bring into the relationship. Because to them, that third person is an object defined by the things they can give to the relationship and the people in it, and not by the person who they are. In a hierarchical relationship, the unicorn hunters would have something called veto power, where they individually can veto that third person. They have more power over that third person. They have power in the relationship that third individual does not have. And this is one of the dangers of people who think that they want to be the unicorns for somebody else's relationship. When you deal with that kind of veto power, you have a very negative power dynamic against you. At any point, the relationship can end, not because you sat down and had communication with your partner and figured out what's going on, but because two people basically conspired behind your back and said, no, you need to get out. In some cases, though, hierarchical relationships are not necessarily bad, but please be aware that when it comes to, again, like the unicorn hunter type relationships, hierarchical relationships are very bad. Opposite of this would be non-hierarchical relationships. This is where everybody who's present is equal. When you enter into the relationship, you have as much say and power as the people who've been in that relationship for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Now, do be aware, hierarchical relationships are controversial in the polyamorous community, and a lot of it is rested on the problems with unicorn hunters. Many people will find hierarchical relationships within polyamorous communities. They'll see them as unethical, and it may actually take you off the dating table for several people. Be aware of that when you are structuring your relationship. There are various forms for the non-hierarchical variety of relationships, but all that ties them together is that no one holds more power than anyone else by default. But if you have a hierarchical relationship, there are some other terms. Primary and secondary partners. Your primary partner, let's say that you've been with somebody for 5 years and you just brought a third person in. Likely, the person you've been with 5 years is your primary partner. They are the people who have power in that relationship. The person you just brought in, they're your secondary partner. They are not quite a side piece in the same way that you would say that someone who you're sleeping with on the side is, but they are not quite to the same level as your primary partner are. Now, these terms are fluid. A primary partner might just mean this is the person you live with, and you hold their opinion in higher regard, but you still very, very highly regard the opinions of your secondary partner. Or it can be full-on power dynamic, power structure. The secondary partner has no power compared to the primary. It really depends. But then there's nesting partners. Your nesting partners are just the people you live with who you are dating. So, as an example, if I were to be dating somebody other than Raz, Raz would be my nesting partner. If Raz were to date somebody other than me, I would be Raz's nesting partner, as we are the ones who live with each other, and likely nobody else will be living with us due to issues that have happened in the past. If you are living with 4 people and you are dating those 4 people are your nesting partners. Now, one last term before we get into some of the pitfalls. Fluid bonding. While it is generally accepted that you should be as safe as possible with sex, there is a term used for people who engage in non-protective sex in polyamory, and that's called fluid bonding. If you choose not to use barrier protection during sex with a partner, usually there's an agreement that there should be safer sex with other people. You're fluid bonding with that partner. So let's say that your nesting partner you have unprotected sex with. They're on birth control, you do that. You know that you two are getting tested, you're fine. But if you have sex with somebody outside of that relationship, you make sure that you wear a condom. Because you do not want to end up accidentally being a danger to the other people in your relationship who you are not having safer sex with. That's really all that term is for. There are people who are okay fluid bonding with all their partners. There are people who think that fluid bonding is this, wonderful ritual that changes the way their relationship dynamic is forever. It really depends on who you are and what relationship you're with. I'm not going to give you advice in there, except please be fucking safe. Okay? Okay. Now for pitfalls. One of the biggest pitfalls in polyamory is communication. Flat out, no ifs, ands, or buts, communication. There are people who try to plan dates with one set of partners and then completely forget or ignore another one of their partners without thinking about it. They forget to inform, or they are developing feelings for somebody and they let them get bigger and bigger and bigger without communicating to their partner that they're even developing in the first place. If those things happen, you are having communication breakdowns. In polyamorous relationships, communication is infinitely more important than it is in a monogamous relationship. And this is because there's infinitely more variables that can go wrong. If there is a thing that one of your partners is not comfortable with, and you don't know because you have not had a conversation with that partner, and so you just assume that it's okay to do a thing like fluid bonding with another partner, that is a communication breakdown. You have not sat down and had the conversation with your partner about who you should fluid bond with, who you shouldn't fluid bond with. If you think about bringing in, your third partner you've been dating for 2 months, and you talk with them about them moving into the house and how wonderful it will be when they move into the house and you can all be one big happy family, but you haven't talked to your nesting partner, the person who lives in the house with you, about whether or not you can bring your secondary partner in. There's a communication breakdown. Things not to assume. Not all polyamorous people live with each other. Plenty of polyamorous relationships happen with people living in separate households, because when you stick 4, 5, 6, 7 people into a household that are all dating each other, shit gets very, very incredibly messy. Never assume anything. Communicate with all your partners. If you have the ability to, have family meetings. Like, straight up. This is a thing that I used to do ages ago, and it is an incredibly helpful thing to do. Sit down at a table with everybody who's in the relationship. Even the person who's only dating one person of the 5 people at the table, they get a seat at the table too. You sit down with them and you go, okay, are there any issues anybody is having? Are there any feelings that have been hurt? Are there any things that we want to do and continue that have felt good for everybody in the past? You want to constantly have communication with everybody in the relationship at all, like period. A great tool would be using Google Calendar, so that everybody can mark when they're available for dates, when they're available to hang out, when they need to allot time with particular partners, when they want to have alone time, and they'd rather their partners go off and do something else without them. Google Calendar is a wonderful tool for a lot of that. Also, I've mentioned a couple things in regards to sex, so maybe it goes without saying, get fucking tested. If you are engaging in polyamorous relationships, you are likely having sex with people who may or may not be having sex with more people outside of your relationship. If that is the case, and it is likely the case, as you have the ability to, please get tested for STDs and STIs. In a poly relationship, if you get a sexually transmitted disease, you are ground zero for everyone else in the relationship getting a disease, and everyone else they date, and it creates a domino effect. Because there are Polycule spider webs that involve multiple people in a daisy chain. And you can become a problem for all of them if you are not getting tested. And it is everybody's individual responsibility to get tested and clearly communicate with your partners. If you have the ability to, if you are about to get in a new relationship with a new partner, ideally, both of you should get tested before that relationship begins, because you are a risk for that partner's partners, and that person is a risk to your other partners, until you have both been cleared. And a lot of that also comes back to communication. I know that polyamory is complicated, and there's a lot more to get into than this. There's an entire thing called ethical versus non-ethical non-monogamy. And there's a very old book that is somewhat out of date, but is still useful for this, called The Ethical Slut, that I would highly recommend reading if you haven't already. But a quick more couple dots. Polyamorous people are not just fuck buddies. They are not, in an ideal world, they are not just people looking for more people to hook up with. Polyamorous relationships are just as deep, just as loving, and just as problematic as monogamous relationships. But they are not better than monogamous relationships, and they are not worse. The last misconception that I want to go into is the fact that they are not better or worse. There are monogamous people who view their relationship with their monogamous partners as infinitely better and more secure than polyamorous relationships, which is not true. Polyamorous relationships, people have breakups. Single relationships, people have breakups. People have breakups all the time. Don't be the monogamous asshole that looks at your friend who's polyamorous when they break up with their girlfriend and say, I told you it wouldn't work out, because poly relationships don't work out. Monogamous relationships fail at the same rate as poly relationships. All the fucking time. But on the flip side, don't start arguing that polyamorous relationships are the future for everyone. They're not. There are people who can't experience conversion or compersion. And forcing them into a polyamorous relationship, if they can't experience that emotion and they haven't consented to it, not a good thing. If you are a polyamorous person, communicate that with your partner, but don't have a superiority complex about your type of relationship being better than others. I have seen in various poly groups that I'm a part of that there are people that will sing the praises of polyamory to the sun and back, and that is wonderful for them. But many times they do it to the exclusion of monogamous couples who are experiencing their own love lives just as validly as polyamorous couples. Don't be a dick if you're a monogamous person and you're friends with a poly person, and if you're a poly person, don't have a superiority complex. And these are the issues that I see all the time between these two. Past that, though, if you know somebody who's poly and you want to know more about it, ask them questions. Their questions are likely going to be tailored to be unique to their particular perspective, but they can still be incredibly useful and insightful for you. And if you are a poly person who's experiencing those feelings of conversion for the first time, it's going to be a bumpy ride. It's not all roses. It's going to suck. But it can also be wonderful. So just take it with a grain of salt. But I know this was a very quick, pulled out of the ass topic. Somebody mentioned in chat. I figured that I could go ahead and just turn it into a whole presentation. So hopefully this, pulled right out of the butt off of memory video is not the worst thing in the world. And hopefully it's been somewhat informative to anybody who's been watching. With that said, though, if you enjoyed this video and this content, then let me know in the comment section below. And as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. If you want access to behind-the-scenes content for the channel, please consider checking out my Patreon. I do weekly vlogs over there, where I give real-life updates to what's going on behind the scenes on the channel, stuff that you don't really get over here, and even on Twitch. Patreon also helps the channel's stability a whole lot. Without Patreon, I wouldn't be able to do this at all. Especially with the kind of content that I do, neither YouTube nor Twitch are the most stable sources of income. If you are a $20 and up patron, then you will be featured on the ending slides as shown in the beginning of the end credits. If you want to catch the streams where all this content comes from, then consider heading over to Twitch and following. And if you want to continue watching over here on YouTube, maybe consider clicking one of the end screen videos. And once again, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me over on my channel. I wouldn't be able to do literally anything that I'm doing over here on YouTube without each and every one of you. So thank you.